minutes before I get started. Not minutes, but seconds. Anyways, before I jump all the way into it, my name is Naomi Olatayo, the Brand Priestess, and I awaken founders and high-ranked leaders to their governance. Everything I do is about new Earth infrastructure and realm-level system architecture. In the comments, the chat, and the the description, depending on when you're watching this, I have a few links. The first one is to my governance mapping session, which is available up until March 14th. There is a link to let me know that you attended. It's barely a questionnaire. It's just your name, email. Just click that you were here. And then there's also a link, which we'll talk about at the end. Anyways, yesterday we talked about why you collapse after receiving clarity. And we even went into more about what a threshold is, right? I today want to specifically talk about how thresholds can almost be met as a trigger. So just to reiterate, a threshold is an internal moment of irreversible decision that manifests outwardly and brings you into direct contact with consequence and responsibility. So for example, a threshold could be purchasing my governance mapping session. Everything that I offer is a threshold because it brings you directly into contact with responsibility and consequence. Another threshold, I used this example yesterday, is marriage. So it all depends. The point is that it's irreversible and it's consequential. For me specifically, I want to share a little bit more of my own story, right? So a big threshold for me that I've been back and forth on for a long time has been visibility. And visibility for me was something that was a risk. It was a risk and it was out of my comfort zone. And so oftentimes when in the past I would reach a threshold of visibility, whatever it was, sometimes it could be reaching out to someone, I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but either way, I'll think of it. Depending on whatever it was, I would usually always feel exhausted. I would feel shut down. I would convince myself to nap, to do nothing, to scroll. I would feel lightheaded. I would have fuzziness around my third eye and my crown. I would get body pains. Like I would feel so frozen I couldn't move. I would feel heavy. I would feel stagnated. And the thing is, like, I couldn't fully meet the moments that I was approached with because it was just so triggering for me. Because again, it's like thresholds bring you into direct contact with consequence, and thresholds bring you into direct contact with, what was the other thing? Consequence and responsibility. And the thing is, I didn't have the capacity at the time to hold either of the two. And so it felt like a threat. I know for a lot of you guys, it's when you confront something, when you are directly involved in something that is asking for your visibility, that is asking for you to be seen, that is asking for you to step out into the unknown or whatever, it's triggering because we are humans that like predictability, we like being in control, et cetera, et cetera. And so whenever I would approach a threshold, I would literally feel shut down. I would spend weeks hating myself because I was so shut down. And then sometimes I would even ignore it altogether and pretend I just didn't receive it or receive the instructions or clarity that I was asking for. And then I would just get so upset and I'm just like, okay, well, God, what's the problem? I thought you told me this is how it's going to be. And I didn't realize it. It's just that as I was approaching these thresholds, I just didn't understand. You know what I mean? Like I just couldn't hold what the responsibility and the consequences were. Right? The thing is, If you fear the responsibility of what the decision is asking of you, or if you fear what the consequences are, you will stall, you will hesitate, and you will avoid. You will stall, and you will always hesitate, and you will always avoid. When I talk about thresholds, when I talk about crossing them and meeting them, whether it's to receive full revelation of the realm that you're authoring, which requires what we talked about in yesterday's session, session 1, which requires stillness, surrender, consent, etc. When you're receiving, it could even be just clarity. Like a lot of y'all have visions that you're just so unclear on that you might be saying like, I don't understand it. But sometimes it's not even about what you don't understand. Sometimes it's about what you haven't consented to. I remember I've worked with so many people where it's the same thing. You have this vision that requires for you to be seen, but being seen is a trigger for you, so you never fully consent. And now you're stuck in this limbo, circling around, and you just don't really you don't really ever get to reach the other side because you just don't feel safe to. And I guess when you're not thinking about it consciously, like when you, in session 1, which is still up, and it will be up for some time, I believe, unless I feel led to take it down. So session 1 is in the live tab on my channel. But when you aren't thinking consciously, and if you don't fully recognize what it is, like in session 1, we broke down the difference between a moment of opportunity and a threshold. And if you don't understand the two, you'll treat moments of opportunity frivolously, and you'll treat threshold moments as if they don't mean anything. And you have to recognize when it is a threshold, because those are the moments that quantum leap you, that bring you into direct contact with everything that you're building. That is how you materialize. That is how you create. Governance is a thresholded thing. And so thinking of it through this lens keeps you in a space where it's not just conscious, but it's intentional. I know for a lot of us, it's like we just default to discipline or to doing. And I talked about that in session 1. It's always about how decisive you are. And I always say, you're only as powerful as your ability to decide. And you can only materialize as quickly as your ability to decide. And so when it comes to making the decision, it doesn't have to feel like you're jumping head first off a cliff. It doesn't have to be something where you just, you're just diving head first without, consulting yourself. It doesn't have to be self-betrayal or avoiding. It doesn't have to be any of that. You don't have to abandon yourself to do so. And for a lot of the thresholds that you're crossing, it could be financial, making a specific investment, pulling the trigger on a specific investment. It could be emotional. It could be having a specific conversation with someone or being honest with somebody. A lot of the times the thresholds that we are crossing are about honesty. How honest are you willing to be? Thresholds require honesty. If you can't be honest with yourself, you can never formally or fully consent. I think I mentioned this in session 1, but I was explaining how in the beginning when I first got this vision, I didn't understand it. I didn't have the full context enough to fully consent. So although I might have said, okay, God, I want to do whatever you're giving me, that wasn't necessarily consent. That was the beginning. But when it started to come to me becoming responsible for what I was here to produce on this earth, and when it came to becoming accountable to the consequences of those things, I couldn't say yes to it because it was a trigger for me. I didn't believe that I could carry everything that I was shown in my vision. I didn't believe that I wouldn't collapse underneath the weight of it. So why would I agree or consent to collapse if I didn't believe that, right? Or even then, like, if I didn't believe that if I wouldn't lose myself, then why would I consent? Why would I consent to this vision? Why would I consent to this governance? Why would I consent to receive the realm that I'm supposed to author if I don't even believe that I have the capacity for it to begin with? You know what I mean? And even, let's say, even if you have, like, if you don't operate outside of external validation, can you still function without it? And if you can't, again, you might not, up until this point, you may not have been conscious in those things, but if you can't function without external validation and what you're originating requires for you to have that outside of that, then, oops, I don't know what that happened just there. But yeah, if you don't even trust yourself without that, then how can you consent to it? You know what I'm saying? But anyways, I want you to think about what it is. What was the last moment of clarity, the last moment of revelation, the last moment of threshold that you've encountered? Again, it could be a financial decision. It could be an emotional decision. I don't care what it is, but there is something that you've been avoiding. There's been something that you've been sitting on for a long time. And I want you to think about it. And I'm going to ask you these few questions, and this will let you know your ability to cross consensually and in full consciousness. First question, what does it cost you? What is the cost that you're going to be paying to consent to this threshold? For me, I feel like doing this live series is a threshold, because it's directly confronting different beliefs I've held for a long time about visibility and just even being received. And it's also something that I couldn't pull back from. I mean, I could, but there would be consequences, right? And what did it cost you? I mean, for this, it didn't cost me much. It just costed me my agreement. But sometimes things that might cost you, it might cost you, sorry, I just got distracted. It might cost you a relationship. It might cost you a direction of life that you were so committed to. What are the consequences? What are the outcomes that you will be holding in results of you consenting to this, crossing this threshold? Third question, what are you now responsible for? What are you responsible for? And lastly, do you trust yourself to handle all of it? Do you trust yourself that you won't collapse underneath it? After that, I need you to decide cleanly and move forward. If you can say yes to all of those, then you're ready. And again, like we spoke about in session 1, it's about your agreement. Not even your agreement, it's about your decision. Can you decide at that moment? You can decide yes or no. And we talked more, again, if you haven't watched session 1, watch session 1. But the point is, it's about deciding. And everything we talked about so far and the questions I've asked you is to make that crossing less daunting. Anyways, for those of you who know that the governance mapping session is the threshold that is next for you to cross, I understand that sometimes receiving that kind of revelation might make you question your own capacity to even gain from it. I understand that it might even make you question if you're even ready. And again, as everything that we've been talking about in session 1 and in session 2, it's about decision. When it comes to governance and receiving understanding of your realm, I created this as a way to collapse the time between understanding that you're a governor and fully embodying your jurisdiction, because your jurisdiction is activated in where you have jurisdiction over. And so inside, it's a map. It's a map of how realms are birthed, how they function, how they operate. It's physics, it's shape, geometry, everything. Everything is broken down in there. And the point is for precision and accuracy. I know sometimes it's easy to just assume or kind of just skip steps, which I did for a long time. And the point is, what I'm trying to say is that I want you to have a cohesion in what you're building, instead of taking several pieces. And I talked about this actually in my call to governance, January 31st transmission. I gave a whole demonstration on it, but if you were there and you remember, the point is staying present long enough for the vision to take form. What this does is bring you closer, not closer, but it brings you to precision do I want to say accurately, but with more context. This is the context you need to understand what it is that you are even authoring as a governor. And so it's a threshold because it's revelation based. The promised is collapse time between revelation and also precision in interpreting revelation. And so it's meaning making alongside with me through this audio. So if that is a threshold that you know that is yours to cross, it is available until March 14th, and the price doesn't increase tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Yeah. Anyways, that's all for today. Session 3, the last and final session, will be at the same time tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. There's a link again down below let me know that you joined today, or that you've watched. And also, in response to what you've received from me and what I've been able to activate within you, you can respond with an offering to what I call the altar of resonance and response. It's optional, but I like to leave that line of reciprocity open for those of you who recognize that is something you would like to respond with. But anyways, thank you for coming to session 2, and I will see you in session 3 tomorrow. Bye.